Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Apolitcally Incorrect Guyana. As usual, my name is Kian Jabour, and I will be your host this evening. Let me first start by apologizing for not being here last week. I had a little issue, and I could not make it. So my apologies to everyone that may have been listening, and we are back here today in full effect and ready to get going. I am on my own tonight. I had a guest that is from that is a doctor at the public hospital, but as we all know, our doctors are extremely hard at work, and sometimes circumstances beyond their control tie up their schedule. So I think in this case, we can completely understand, but nonetheless, the show must go on. So what I've done is I have decided that I was going to try a little bit of a different approach, and an approach that I hope most politicians can follow in this day and age. And I am going to be fielding some calls from the public. I'm going to be hearing some views from you. I'd like you guys to please call in, ask any questions you'd like about anything, and we're going to keep the conversation rolling to a lot of various topics here in Guyana. So what I can do initially is the telephone number should be up on the screen if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully it is. If not, it is 231-2982. All right, 231-2982. All right, feel free to call in whenever you like as the conversation progresses. Let me get some input from your side and answer some questions if I can, and hear what you have to say on the matters at hand. So, firstly, I think what's plastered in the headlines that we're all talking about on a daily basis right now, because it's ongoing, are the budget debates. So, as we know, budget was presented last Monday in Parliament by the Minister of Finance, and it was the largest budget to date. We are over $700 million now, and it was touted as our first oil-propped budget. So it's the first budget that has some of our oil money in it, and it was quite an interesting budget. I think a lot of people had some different opinions. I think there were quite a few things that people wanted to see, and then I also think that there were a few things that people were hoping to see that didn't see. And then maybe in the middle, there were some give or take. And I think that those are quite a bit of the topics that are in debate. So to get into it, if you haven't been paying attention, the lion's share of the budget has gone to infrastructure. And rightfully so. Infrastructure in a developing country that has had a large infusion of cash, as we have with the oil money and the oil industry, is expected and understandable. So what we need to do now as a country is ensure that that money is managed correctly. And why I say that money is managed correctly is because, as everyone knows, no government has its own money. It's all taxpayers' money. All money from any resource belongs to the people of Guyana. And because of this, it is all of our responsibilities to ensure accountability and transparency and make sure that we are benefiting as much as we can from the money that this country has and the resources and the availability of options that exist and is created from our resources. So, as I mentioned, the lion's share has gone to our infrastructure. So, rightfully so, again, infrastructure is absolutely necessary, but I think one of the largely debated topics at the moment, and as you could have heard during the budget presentations, are the fact that a lot of these contracts that are going out seem to be going to family and friends and to people of a certain circle and not particularly trickling down. I think that is a very interesting comment that I heard in Parliament of the construction industry having a trickle-down effect. So again, as somebody that has been in politics for quite a few years now and has been researching various countries around the world and what may exist already, trickle-down economics is very often looked upon as not a viable option when it comes to a country's development. The reason being is there are almost no examples around the world of when the rich get richer, the poor get richer. That's not exactly how economics works, and that's not how capitalism works either, for that matter. So what we're watching now is a continuation of many projects that, we desperately need, but more so an issue we're having around the country of not enough of the right type of development. And what I mean by that is we're not watching the progress evolve. So, I mean, I can go into the nitty-gritty of small things like, Sheriff Street, for example, having been fixed only a matter of a year and a half ago, that is already crumbling. That is at the head of Sheriff Street, opposite the zoo there, that road is already deteriorating. It just goes to show, and as you all may or may not know around the world, roads are not destroyed in a day. All right, roads are not destroyed in a week. Roads are built with at least a 10-year lifespan when properly done. And what we're finding is that these projects now have become increasingly obvious that work of substandard levels are being done. So what we're watching is, or needing now, is an evolution of our expertise. Meaning, you have a street now, and it's going to be interesting because we're watching quite a bit of it happen already. So we're watching some infrastructure on Carifesta Avenue in particular. And what you're going to notice is all the work that's been done, and as of recent, the middle has been upgraded where the traffic lights are, where the street lights are. And anyone that traverses that road on a daily basis will have already begun to notice that there are these large cracks beginning to develop down the middle of the road. So that comes from two things. One, the surface cap of that road has had subpar work done on it. And then two, I think what's most important is that the shoulder of the road and onto the actual gravel at the side has nothing of a retaining wall type structure next to it. So what is done in most countries, and I guess I need to give you a little bit of background. I studied engineering, construction engineering in school in Canada. So it's one of the areas that I looked at very closely, which is road work. And it was a civil engineering aspect of my program. And one of the issues that our roads are having is that there is nothing stopping the dirt at the side of the road as cars constantly pass and vibrate the road. Micro vibrations is causing the dirt at the side to fall off into the gutter. And you will notice this around many, many roads around the country. So what it's lacking is a retaining wall along the road that ensures that dirt and material, sand, etc., loam, stay underneath the road. So rather than the cap of the road vibrating and shaking and everything underneath it slowly moving out to the side, then that road begins to break away and crack. What you need to do is build a wall along that road. And those walls are built within the guttering. So what we want to start seeing now is a development in our infrastructure where not only are the roads of a higher quality, but are built in a manner that they can be sustained. And this is done around the world where the sidewalks of the road, which is another issue that has been noticed and debated about recently. Why are the roads not being built with sidewalks? As you can tell, the roads, the traffic is increasing. The population is increasing as you have more people coming into the country to do business. You have, more people hopefully finding jobs and heading out of their homes more often as they would need to. But the infrastructure not being done in a proactive manner to cater for that. So what we're finding is a lack of evolution in our development, in our infrastructural development. So a sidewalk, for example, can be built along any road, and where it is best done is obviously where over a guttering. So what you would do is you have a gutter at the side of the road. You would build a concrete structure, a concrete enclosing on that, around that guttering, so the water can travel freely. You can even put a piping within it, and then you would cover it, creating a sidewalk. And this is done, as you know, everywhere you walk around in any developed country, and you'll walk over, manholes or grates, grills along the road, that you'll see that underneath that road will have, water flowing. It'll be a guttering system or a subway or something else beneath. But nonetheless, people are walking above. So that also serves as a safer option for the developing, for people as the nation develops, and then more so to stop the road from deteriorating. So these are all options that we need to look at. And when I look at the contracts that are being given out, there are no stipulations for things like sidewalks. And that's increasingly becoming more and more of an issue. I watched the new, I call it the Carrion Crow Road, because I'm not sure if it has a name yet, where the new 4-lane highway that's running parallel to the East Bank Road, that is built out of the concrete, the new concrete surface. And every day, I'm sure the people that travel there see it as I do, there are people traversing in the middle of that road. Well, not only is that dangerous, but it begs the question, why were sidewalks not catered to already? You just built a brand new road. You know that all the land along that area has been earmarked for development, whether it be condominiums, whether it be businesses, whether it be gas stations, whatever it may be. But where are the people going to be walking? So you end up having either people walking, one on the road or two in the dirt. And both of those are options that should have been catered to long before that contract was even given out. And those type of things are designed within the government facilities, within the Ministry of Infrastructure. So, yeah, it begs the question, if money is available, as we all know, why then is our thinking process, our thought process, not developing as we have more resources? Why are we not upgrading our facilities as we need to be? So that was, that was a large part of our development. I see they're doing a lot of work within the roads to Mabura, which leads to Lethem and down to Linden. I think that's wonderful progress. I think that's absolutely necessary. That trade route in itself being developed not only for business between Guyana and Brazil, but more so for our interior businesses like logging and gold mining and quarrying, where you'll now have, as I'm sure anyone can attest to this within those industries, that the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles that you have is the access to and from, whether it be the destruction of your vehicles or the fact that, as those loom roads get destroyed during the rainy season, they become impassable. So I think that is definitely a step in the right direction. I hear the new railway is being spoken about again. I like to let me just touch on that for a second. I like the conversation of that the government regularly has, which addresses basically every single problem. And what it is it's one thing that both the APNU and PPP have perfected. I think it says something that, if there's one thing I think all Guyanese can attest to, is that both of these political organizations are very well aware of all the problems Guyanese face. We hear them speak about it on a daily basis. If anyone has been listening to the budget debates, they have covered everything under the sun when it comes to issues that all Guyanese are facing. What I find a little unfortunate, though, is that if you go back into your history books, if you go back, social media is wonderful for it. Just step back 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, right on social media, and you'll see them having addressed these issues over and over and over for years. And what me, as you know, a youth under 35 years old, and having a daughter within the school system here in Guyana, I find that a lot of these issues are reoccurring much too often, especially given the fact that our politicians are aware of them, and more so our politicians in power. So we constantly hear, oh, it'll take time, it needs to take time, Rome wasn't built in a day. But I'm sorry, these are two political organizations that have been running this country now for over 50 years, both having equal time in power and with a majority government, not hindering any decision-making processes. So the question that has to be asked is, why have these issues not been helped before? Why have these issues not been addressed? Why have we not resolved these problems by now? You hear the naysayers, but we didn't have money back then. Well, unfortunately, I am one of those, I guess, optimistic ones that cannot keep making excuses. And I'm a definitely firm believer, and as I guess somebody that has been able to be witness to many documents and information when it comes to government structures and systems, can tell you that this country has always had money. And we all can look at that on even a basic facade level. We've always had gold, diamond, bauxite, sugar, timber, rice. We've had it all for our entire history. And the list goes on. And we look at countries like Barbados that have none of the above, but are developing at a much faster rate than we are. So it begs the question, how can a country as rich as Guyana always has been not have addressed these problems before? I like to look at, on the topic of infrastructure. We have an interesting system set up where we have NDCs, which are run in are contested in local government elections. And then we have our central government, which is the Ministry of Public Works when it comes to infrastructure. And what you see around the world is a lot more organizations and a lot more companies, government structures using their democratic, their regional or local democratic councils to address the needs of those living within those districts. So what one of the ideas is here is that if you have a central government that is operating out of Georgetown and only on weekends or in special occasions ventures to other aspects of the country, but not actually living there on a daily basis, then what you find is a breakdown in communication on what those local people are dealing with in their areas. And one of the ways to deal with that when it comes to a political landscape is bringing some of that power, if you will, that governance into those local democratic regions. So what you'd like to see a little bit more is the people of New Amsterdam, for example, voting for a representative in New Amsterdam to represent them in Parliament. And that person, whether they are a part of the PPP or a part of the PNC or a part of ANUG or a part of AFC or any other political organization, those people will be first answerable to the people of New Amsterdam. What you're going to find there all of a sudden is politicians and members of parliament fighting a lot more aggressively and a lot more firmly for the people of New Amsterdam, because the first person that they're answerable to before the political organization that they're a part of is the people. What comes along with that type of system is the decentralization of financing. So what you need to do is you need to take the finances from the central government, take the population of New Amsterdam, and say, well, here, if you have this many people living there, and this is what our GDP is, this is what the country has earned for the year, we divide that by your population, And that money is then allocated for their needs and is given to that member, that democratic council, that local council, to do that work for that community. All of a sudden, you will find pockets of people around the country watching their communities develop at a much more rapid pace because their leaders are answerable to them. And that is where our breakdown comes in this country, a large part of it. Once you have voted, at this point in time, as the system is set up, once you have voted for a list of people that belong to a political party, that political party can now remove or put or add anyone that they like to parliament. So what you're ending up with is a system that the MPs, the members of parliament, which we're hearing debate on a daily basis right now, are not answerable to the people that they are speaking about, but answerable to a political organization. And this is a system that this country has been plagued with for too many years now. We need a government that answers to the people. The money and resources belong to the people of Guyana, not the government. When you read in the newspapers, government donates motorcycle, First Lady's office donates sanitation products, government donates ponds to the fishing community or nets or gives them grants. The government doesn't do any of that. That's already the Guyanese people's money. This is our taxpayers' money. So the question you have to beg to ask is, why is the system developed that once you have voted in a political party, is the whole country now hoping that they do what's best for us, rather than ensuring and forcing them to do just that? And this is where we have to start looking at systems of governance and things like constitutional reform. There are a lot of changes that need to be developed along our systems here in Guyana to ensure that everyone in this country benefits equally, and not just specific groups gaining more favor than the next. Not just a group of people scared to talk out against the government because they have to depend on government contracts, but more so people questioning why the process is not transparent and the playing field is not level. We need people that can speak out when they see wrongdoings, when a contractor gets a project and he takes this project on and he says, okay, I have to build this road, I've been given this contract. He doesn't need to worry, oh, wait a second, this contract has a flaw in it, but I have to worry about questioning this flaw because it'll make the government look bad. No, that person should be able to stand up and say, I'm not doing this work because this is subpar work, this is shabby work, this is not what the Guyanese people are paying for, or I am paying for that matter, because themselves are taxpayers and they expect better work to be done. They need to be able to stand up and say that. A large aspect of this, moving down from people that have big companies doing contract work, are people that are on a constant daily struggle dealing with the cost of living. And one of the large debates at the moment has been, during the budget debates, has been that there are nothing in there for the low-income earners here in Guyana. Why I say low-income earners is because when you look at the specific incomes, you need to categorize, and it's done across the world, as high-income earners, middle-income earners, and low-income earners. Low-income earners meaning people that are earning minimum wage, a little above, thereabouts. So one of the large aspects of this, and it's one of my, I've been listening to it very closely, and it's one of my more intriguing topics, hearing them debate in Parliament, is that of the cost of living and what the average Guyanese, which equates to maybe about 90% of our population, are dealing with on a daily basis, and whether or not the budget itself has allocated or put enough programs in place or dropped enough taxes in order to ensure a better life for the low-income earners here in Guyana. I mean, I just spoke about they haven't even built sidewalks, but I guess I can, continue that conversation where we, as what needs to be looked at when it comes to low income earners is what can I do as a government to get money into the pockets of Guyanese as quickly as possible. People must be able to have something called financial independence. So I did a little breakdown here, and hopefully this can put a little insight when it comes to the average cost of living here in Guyana. And, give or take a few things, but hopefully you guys can, fill in the blanks wherever I have missed. Hopefully not too much, because I wouldn't want my figure to rise too much. So my cost of living breakdown goes to rent or mortgage. As we know, many house lots have been given out recently in houses, which is a good thing, but we'll get into that debate and, the pros and cons in a minute. But your rent or mortgage for an average person being in and about $70,000 a month. So I'd like to just start by clarifying something. Minimum wage has to be looked at on a little bit more of a in-depth level, and I think a lot of times people don't particularly grasp what minimum wage means. So what minimum wage needs to be translated to, and the correct definition is minimum livable wage. So this amount of money that should be the bare amount that a person living on bare necessities, basic needs, can survive on. So it's a minimum livable wage. And that income, that number, is actually calculated not just by what an adult would need, but actually an adult with a dependent. So a minor depending on them. Let's say a single mother, a single father, somebody that has a child depending on them. How much money is the minimum amount of money that they should be earning in order to survive and live a life that brings a level of comfort, or at least their bare basic needs are being met? So I did my little breakdown here, and please feel free to call in and correct as I go on. I'm sorry I'm not answering, but as I continue, I will. Feel free to call in and continue to. I'll answer as we move along as I get the break. So cost of living. You have your mortgage or rent, which is around $70,000 a month. All right. You have your, let's say a person was to take a bus of about $500 a day, to and fro. So $500 a day in bus fare. For you and your dependent. And then you have food and groceries, which I put at around $3,000 a day. That equals to about $120,000 monthly just on food. Then you have your public school amenities, which you can call after, books and clothing, etc., pencils and stuff. You can look at, after a school term, you can look at about $10,000 monthly. A school term is 4 months in the year, is broke down quarterly. So you'd have about, call it $30,000 to $40,000 every semester. So I broke that down to about $10,000 monthly. Then you have your utilities, which is GPL, give between $15,000 to $20,000 a month. You then have something like your cooking gas. I have it here at $5,500 a month. $5,500 per cylinder. We all know that has gone up. Then your water bill comes in and around $3,000 to $5,000 a month. We live in a modern age. You have internet at around $7,000 a month. That's your basic internet package. Your cell phone, again, anybody that has to have communication with the outside world has to have a cell phone in this day and age. $5,000 a month. Then there is your personal health care and the health care of your child. Every little child gets sick, or you yourself get a little flu, or just need a Tylenol at the end of the day. I have that at about $10,000 a month just for tablets and maybe a doctor's appointment here and there if necessary. And then your personal spending money. Again, an adult would need to spend money. As we know, what runs a balanced life is having a social life. And I just basically put, and then, your basic necessities, your deodorant, your, personal necessities that an adult person might need. I put that in and around $15,000 a month. What I did after this calculation is I added all of this up. I even went as far as doing 3 different calculations. One, if the person owns a car, has to pay a monthly maintenance fee, has to pay car payments and gas. And then there's the bus. And then I even put down an option of taking a taxi because, not everybody wants to take public transportation, which is our bus services, but maybe taking a taxi. And after all those calculations, the minimum that and I know I've missed many things here, that we have calculated for a person to be earning as a minimum wage, a minimum livable wage, is $282,500. This is the breakdown of the figures that I have just given you. We all know that the minimum wage in Guyana has not even reached $100,000 yet. Those basic expenses that I just called for you is at $282,000. Cut that in half. Let's say my numbers are wildly wrong. You still have not gone as low as what the minimum wage currently is, in and about what, $85,000, $80,000 a month? So the question begs to ask, how exactly are there other benefits being given to people to ensure that this minimum wage that is touted as oh, look how much money we've raised it by 15%, 25%, still barely, not even close to sufficing of a person being financially independent? If you own a car, it'll be $362,000 per month. If you decide you want to take a taxi, it'll be $297,000 per month. Call it $300,000. So my question again is, when this is looked at on a holistic level, when 90% of this country is earning less than $150,000 a month, it begs to ask, how exactly is our population surviving? And are we actually heading more and deeper into a crisis as our cost of living continuously rises? As we all know the breakdown, goods has risen almost 30% in the last year. Almost 30%. And we can blame all we want on the international situation. And yes, I agree with you. I hear what you're saying. Internationally, things are getting harder. Things are getting more expensive. I hear you. But that is not the job of the government to put that burden solely on its citizens. Okay, especially a country like Guyana that is now earning over 5 million US per day on oil revenues. That money has to come directly back to the people, to the citizens of Guyana. Okay, we have to start looking at things in a short-term, medium-term, and long-term scale. If I am not eating today, I cannot worry about tomorrow. All right? And we have too many instances, as we were watching on a regular basis here, of people, and the breakdown that I just showed you, of people not earning enough and the cost of living rising drastically. Taxes need to be lowered. PAYE altogether needs to be gotten rid of and now subsidized by our new income earner. Okay? We have to start looking at our local fundamental industries like farming and mining, industries that have kept Guyana from sinking for all our history. We are watching the rice industry crumble right now. We have all our rice farmers out there. We have all our rice millers out there. We know what the industry is going through. I am on GRDB board myself, and I can tell you, we have an excellent board. We have an excellent chairman. I think that the board has the right idea for the changes that need to happen drastically to ensure our rice industry does not flop and go under. Because at this point in time, there is no way that Guyana's rice is competing with the rice that's being produced around the world, whether it be in Thailand, in Singapore, in India, in Brazil, in China. These countries are producing rice for far, far cheaper and have experts and scientists working far, far more advanced than our rice industry scientists are working. So we are falling way too far behind. And we need large, drastic changes in our rice industry in order for us to ensure that the rice industry stays afloat. And a large part of that will start stepping into value-added products from that rice industry. I'm very fortunate that I'm actually the chairman of the value-added subcommittee on GRDB, and we have drastic work to do. And it can only be met by if the government is going to put large support behind that research. That's what it comes in. It's a new industry for Guyana, and it has to be looked at. All right. One of the other areas that I had mentioned briefly was the housing is another large feather in the cap of the current administration, which is the PPP government. They have touted for a long time now that that they have given away over 10,000 house lots. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think the more assets that a Guyanese can accumulate, the better. House lots are, and owning your own land and home is critical for all Guyanese. I think it is definitely the bedrock and foundation of ensuring our society is developed in a sustainable manner. So some of the arguments that have been being thrown back and forth in Parliament is some more detail into the house lots that are being given away. Part of that is, if you have given away 10,000 house lots, I think one of the figures that needs to be given to the general public is how much of that, how many of those house lots have been developed to the point where a citizen can build on it, or the owner can build on it, whether it be the roadway, electricity, water, those basic infrastructural needs. And then even more so, how much is even accessible? How much of those 10,000 house lots can people even see? All those people that have gotten house lots and letters of approval, how many have even seen their land? How many, we go into the housing, we heard stories day in and day out of land that you can't even access, it's just bush. Granted, it's a house lot that's been given out, but we have to look at things on a little bit more of a holistically and short-term situation. And that short-term situation is, none of these house lots are being given away. These house lots are being sold. Let's get that straight and understand that. The government is selling these house lots to the citizens of Guyana. If a house lot is sold, the average house lot goes for anywhere between $2 to $5 million, 5 million Guyana dollars for a house lot. Half of that needs to be paid up front, and the second half needs to be paid within 6 months to a year. That's the general contract and general leeway that's given. So now you have the average society, 90% of whom is earning under $150,000 a month, now needing to find $1 million up front to just put the down payment on the house, and then find another $1 million within a year. Now that they're $2 million in the hole, that person now needs, let's say it's one of the better house lots that already has a road, and has already gotten electricity and water. That person now needs to build on that land. Well, one of the unfortunate roll-offs, one of the unfortunate side effects of that amount of money being pumped into infrastructure is the fact that all the building materials in the country raise in price because the demand has now risen. So whether it be sand, stone, steel, cement, basic necessities, blocks, etc., which are all built from those fundamental materials, have now risen in price. So now you have the cost of that person earning less than $150,000 a month, needing to find at minimum $5 to $10 million to build a home. And that is on the extreme low side. $5 to $10 million to build their home. What do they need to do? They need to go to the bank. They need to put that same transported house lot up as collateral and they need to get that $10 million in order to build their house. So the bank will loan them $10 million, stating, we are going to hold on to this transport of this land, and we're going to give you $10 million. You build your house, and then you have to pay the bank at a steady rate over 15 to 20 years, between 10 and 20 years. You need to pay us back this $10 million that we're lending you. And if you don't pay it back, we are going to take the house, we are going to foreclose on your house, and we are going to take your land as well. So this person earning under $150,000 now has a bank loan of $12 million because there's a $2 million for the house out and a $10 million to build the house. All through this time, all through the time that this house is being built, this person still needs to pay to live where they currently are. This person still needs to survive, go to and from work, and pay all this that I just showed you on my breakdown. So what we're watching can potentially be a very slow bubble that is expanding, that the housing market is now being propped up by, that can pop when all of a sudden, within the next 3 to 5 years, you're watching all these people's incomes that have not risen no longer being able to pay their debt to the bank for the house that is being built. So what happens in a case like that is what we watched happen around the world already. We just watched it happen a couple of years ago in America. And all of a sudden, people can no longer afford to pay their mortgage. And then the bank starts to foreclose. And then you have widespread poverty. What leads to poverty? All kinds of social deterioration. And this is one of the areas that we're watching. And this budget, we were hoping would have been able to tackle. Because unless we're putting more money in the average person's pockets, we are not going to be able to sustain the progress and trajectory that we're moving at. So, how are some ways that we can look at doing this? So some of the ways, obviously, are by reducing taxes. So, I know PAYE is one that should have been removed long ago, okay? The citizens are not seeing the benefit of it. We know that that money is ending up in areas and places it shouldn't, and it is far too large a cut out of the average person's paycheck, in and around 30% when you add up NIS and everything, to a person's paycheck, that they are not reaping or seeing any benefit from. The roads are still shabby, they still get in blackout, the water's still garbage, the police there's still corruption, the schools are still deteriorating. So the question that you have, the hospitals are still in a deplorable condition. So the question you have to ask is, all this time, all this money has been paid. Where is the development that is being spoken about? We really need to take our time here and develop. I'm sorry, I haven't seen any calls come through for a little while. Don't think I'm just trying to rant. As I see more calls coming through, I'll be happy to answer them now that the show has taken a role. So again, areas that we need to start looking at are the reduction in VAT. We need to look at interest rates being lowered, because at this point in time, it's through the roof. I think the lowest you can get right now is 7 to 8%. And that, if you just take the time and do some research around the world, it's in and around 1 to 3%. We are 300 and 400% more than that. So we really have to start looking at where the banking industry can be subsidized. Money can be used from our natural resources, from our income earners, to ensure that people are able to sustain their life here in Guyana, because that is what the money is for. We look at other ways, and we hear a lot about development here in Guyana and all the opportunities that are available. So we look at a few other options that lots of business ventures. There's large companies coming in from abroad, and there are more investments being done. And these large companies need businesses, local businesses, that can help to fill the gaps. How can you find a way to open a bottling water company. Let's say you want to open a small company that sells water because lots more people in the country, lots more businesses, they need water to drink. Okay, great. Well, let's use our bottling water company. I'm a small businessman and I need money to open a small bottling plant so that I can sell my water. I can drive my little cant around. So now let's look at the reality of what the average young entrepreneur or new entrepreneur is facing. So although there may be many opportunities available, many more opportunities coming online, what we're finding is that with the rising cost of living, and again, the international aspect that plays a part, you are finding the investment needed to open this small bottle water bottling plant for this water has become a much larger investment than was in the previous years. So all of a sudden, when you hear a small business needing, small business bureau or the small business incubators around the country giving away $1 million to a small business to say, here, we've given 1,000 small businesses money to start their business. Well, the truth is, $1 million does nothing for anyone anymore, because the space that I need to rent no longer is $40,000. It's now $140,000 a month. The equipment that I need to bring in from foreign to bottle this plant, I still have to pay high shipping costs that are much higher than they were 3 years ago. I still need to pay the higher price for the equipment itself from the foreign country that I'm purchasing from. My labor has gone up, right? We are still paying almost 40% of our income tax as small business owners. And then on top of that, your VAT, which at the end of the day equals to almost 50% of your income. Then you go through all the red tape of having to incorporate your business, pay your lawyers, get into all of these minor expenses that are now 3 times as much as they were. And that $1 million is now a joke. And if you don't invest the correct amount of money initially in your business, you are doomed to fail. Because let's say you decide, oh, well, I'm not, I can't afford the best filtration system because I only have a much smaller budget now and filtration systems have gone up in price. Well, guess what? Now you're selling water of a worse quality than other companies, than the larger companies, and your business is doomed to fail. Because as people test it, somebody gets sick, all of a sudden your business fails. And these are what we need to start looking at more seriously. Not just the fluff, not just the words and the excitement. Because in politics and in life, there are governments that rule in 2 ways. There are ones that rule out of fear, and then there are ones that rule out of hope. And hope is the only thing stronger than fear. Hope that things will get better. And that's why you hear politicians promising, oh, we are going to build this. We have all the plans to do this. We are going to develop this. And our next year, we are going to be focused on this. And year after year, you hear the promises over and over. And you know what's worse than hope? What's worse than fear? False hope. Okay? False hope. And unless they are addressing these things head on, all we are going to be left with is false hope. We cannot continuously be promised over and over and over that things are going to get better. But year after year, we are watching ourselves struggle. We are watching our expenses far outweigh our income. We are watching us struggle to expand our businesses. We are watching our income pay less and less of our bills. We're watching our salary deteriorate before our eyes. And we say, well, no, salaries are raising. I just gave 8%. But if you know cost of living has gone up by 30%, how can 8% suffice? How is that even possible? We have huge plans coming up for the electricity cost to be lowered. Well, all the studies have shown now. We can just look to our neighbors, Suriname, and to see that this natural gas plant that is being built is already 10 times what it's supposed to cost. We were already been given these promises for the Amelia Falls hydro project. Electricity is going to get cut in half, and we're going to be given 10 times more electricity than we need. Okay, blackouts will end. Well, let's look at a little bit of research that has been done. At this point in time, now that we're on the topic of electricity and GPL, at this point in time, GPL is capable of generating 226 megawatts per hour. That equates to 5,424 megawatts per day. The demand that GPL currently is catering for is 104 megawatts per hour. 140, sorry. That equals to 3,264 megawatts per day. We are producing over 2,000 megawatts per day than we need, than the people of Guyana are utilizing. So that says that the power generation, the amount of electricity that we are generating right now at GPL is more than enough in order for all Guyanese to have enough power and for there to be no blackouts. But yet there's not an overload on the system. That is what these figures show. There is no overload on GPL's system. So what we're watching is that we have what is more so a distribution problem. So if we are spending 2.2 billion US dollars, a project that should cost in and around 700 million US dollars, on a brand new fossil fuel natural gas plant, and I say fossil fuel because we haven't even touched on the environment, on a fossil fuel plant that the world has decided, America, Canada, the World Bank, all the people, the EU, no one has lent us any money because they have said they will be not allowing any new fossil fuel energy projects. So we are funding all of this money from our pockets. Okay, let's get that straight. We are borrowing money from ourselves that we don't have to build this electricity plant, to produce more energy that we don't need. Okay, and we have decided that they can convince us that this will solve all of our electrical problems. Well, if you have more power now being generated in this generation plant, the same amount or a little bit more than is already being generated, how is it coming to us if all of our infrastructure, our lantern posts, our wires, our what you call them, the bigger transformers are all below par, are all below standard, and that is what is causing most of our leakage in electricity, most of our blackouts. When that starts to short or something blows up, it's nothing to do with the generation. It has all to do with our distribution at the moment and lack of maintenance. The question that is begged to ask, what exactly is the proactive thinking that is going to help solve our problem? And another large aspect that I'm worried about to no end, and I'm going to share a little bit of my personal, feeling on this, is that natural gas plant the natural gas is being piped to the Wales estate, to the new power station, the new generating plant at Wales, through a pipeline that Exxon is building that is attached to one of Exxon's rigs. Now, Exxon is a private company. Exxon is not the government of Guyana. Let's be honest, Exxon has no interest to look out for the best of the Guyanese people. That's not their job. They're here to make money and make sure their shareholders are happy and earn as much as they can. So my question is, if we are building a pipeline to a private company that needs to make sure that the gas is going through there because that boat out there is theirs, what if that partnership falls apart? What if, let's say, the contract needs to be renegotiated and Exxon disagrees? And they just decide, well, hey, guess what? We packing up shop and we leaving. We jumping on our boat and we headed out. Well, how then do we get natural gas? How then do we get electricity? Because what I'm watching is more and more on a daily basis us developing a dependency on the oil companies. We're becoming more and more, controlled by what these companies are doing. When in actual fact, let's be honest, the real idea, land of many waters, as everyone knows, do a little bit of research on Google, there are so many sustainable and environmentally friendly ways and renewable ways to produce energy now. And again, I go right back to hydro, something that this government, the PPP government, in their last term, was touting as what is necessary. Well, how has that changed? Why have we now gone back to burning fossil fuels, which is bad for the environment, has a shelf life, because after a while it will run out, and then secondly, making us dependent on oil companies, when we could just take that same 2.2 billion US dollars and go and build a hydro project. Go and find another place, build a dam, something that has the least impact on our environment, build a dam and creating energy for the country. It's being done in places like Niagara Falls for 20, 30, 40 years now. Niagara Falls produces electricity for Canada, Ontario, and New York. And that is the main supplier of electricity for two of the biggest cities in the world. So how are you telling me that we can't build a power plant, a hydro plant to supply little 700,000 Guyanese people? Explain that. And so a power plant, a hydro plant that you, the government, told us will work and is the right thing for the Guyanese people. Why has it changed now? Why can that natural gas not just be pumped onto a boat just like the oil is and sold to other countries that are already using it and already have a system that is dependent on it? Why are we creating more dependency on fossil fuels when we could just go straight to renewable energy, which is better for environment, better for our children, better for our future? Guys, that is me ranting for almost an entire hour now. And I'm going to have a very special guest on next week. I've already lined it up. I think you all need to tune in next week. Next week, Friday at 6:30, I will be here with a very special guest. And we're going to be talking about some very interesting things. Somebody that had a very big part to play in the 2020 elections and what occurred with that entire ordeal. And someone that I personally believe has the ability, and you're going to get a little bit of it, to lead this country. So thank you for joining me. Unfortunately, I wish I could have spoken to a few people, but honestly, I think maybe the battery has died on the phone or something, because I hadn't gotten any more calls. Nonetheless, thank you again for joining me. Please, you can reach me on my personal Facebook, Kian Jabour. Apolitcally Incorrect has a Facebook page, and we are on every day here at Daybreak News Studio, or better known as Guyanese Critics Studio, and every Friday at 6:30. So until next week, everyone, thank you for joining me.